for tuning in. Hi, I'm Ryan McGranahan, and this is Carded Tarot Tales, the show that combines storytelling and tarot. I'm really excited to be back again with another edition. I have three fantastic storytellers lined up for you tonight, and if you're joining us for the second or even third or fourth time, welcome back. We're so happy to have you, and if this is your first time watching the show, basically what happens is I've invited storytellers that I like to come and share a story with us, and after they share their story, I pair it with, I don't know what they're going to share ahead of time, and I pair it with a tarot card that's appropriate to what they've just shared, and then at the end of the night, I take all three cards that have matched with the stories and do a short reading based on that. So instead of random shuffle determining what the cards are going into the tarot reading, the stories determine the cards. So we're sort of collaboratively creating a reading for the night, which I think is a lot of fun, and part of the reason why I like doing that is I think that's really where the magic of tarot comes from, is the imagery of the cards, ability to stimulate our mind, and for us to fill in the narrative patterns based on the images and help us reframe the stories we're telling ourselves about our own life. And so I think the magic, so to speak, isn't in the cards, and it's not in some mystical divinatory process. It's in the power of narrative. So I love pairing storytelling and tarot together, and I'm really excited to introduce the deck we're going to be using tonight. It's I actually don't know how to pronounce it correctly. It's the Visconti Sforza deck, and it's it might be it's either the second or first oldest tarot deck that we have preserved from antiquity. It dates to it's a reproduction of a deck. The one I have is a reproduction of a deck that was created circa 1450 to celebrate the marriage of two noble families, which is where its name comes from, and it's got beautiful imagery on it, and it's going to glitter a little bit in the camera light with almost a holographic look because it was printed with beautiful gold foil, and the reproduction restores that to what it would have looked like when it was originally created. And it's a deck that it follows, it somewhat closely adheres to the standard Marseille pattern, the sort of traditional deck of antiquity, but it was customized for a noble family by an artist, and so some of the cards are actually designed to look like actual nobles, people from history. And so I think that's a lot of fun, that we're using a deck where the images aren't just sort of archetypal images of people, they also sometimes represent real people who lived and died and had their own stories. So I can't wait to get into it and start matching the cards with these stories. And the first storyteller, that I'm so happy to have got to know this person. She's one of the many people in the storytelling community that I miss getting to see in person while we're all self-quarantining. But I'm so happy to have gotten to know her, and excited to have her here to share a story with us tonight. I hope you'll please welcome Ronnie Allen.
I love this topic. It's a new moon, and I'm pretty witchy myself, so it's awesome to be doing a tarot show tonight. I'm going to talk a little bit about my different experiences with tarot. When I was 19 years old, my dad wanted to pay for this like birthday party for me that was dinner for my friends and tarot readings, which was kind of funny. I don't know. I've always been a little bit witchy, and my family's like funky and spiritual. So we get there, me and all of my high school buddies, and it's this like middle-aged white guy who's a tarot reader, and it's my birthday, and I was really like looking forward to, oh, like you're gonna have, sorry, you see the Lysol in the background. You're gonna have like success as a theater major in college, or you know, something really exciting is coming, but instead he just like shows me this card. And so for a bit of context, like I'm a lesbian, and he shows me this card of this guy who's, you know, an attractive, like very bulky man. And I was just like, and he's like, this is gonna be your soulmate. Like you're gonna find your true love and get married this year. And I kind of took it literally. And so like he didn't give this reading just to me. He was telling like I had Liz and Sarah, two of my friends are identical twins, and they like to do everything together. And like Sarah, the more shy one, was told she was going to meet her soulmate that year too. So as you can see, very legitimate, legitimately talented mystic we had. So she was told she would meet the man of her dreams, and Liz wasn't, and so they were kind of like in and outs that night. It was really funny. But I looked at the card and I was like, so every time I saw like a buff black man, I was like looking at him like with this gaze, like maybe you're my soulmate, and I don't know it yet, and like maybe I will fall in love with a guy and like live happily ever after and not deal with being gay or anything or any microaggressions there. And it led to some pretty funny misadventures, like the security guard at work. I worked at Tommy Hilfiger in Manhattan, and I didn't have a Valentine's, so we spent Valentine's Day together, and we split a big Mudman chicken sandwich. And I was like, this doesn't feel super romantic, but like maybe you're the one. And then Lance, who worked in IT, in the computer department at school, I'm like, I don't know, like maybe we should get coffee. And he's a really nice guy, but we didn't really have anything in common. And then I learned that you're not supposed to take tarot cards literally. You can like interpret them in certain ways. And just because, and also sometimes a reading is based off of the reader's energy and like how they're feeling and the vibes they're getting, whatever. So I wound up having just a flock of guy friends that happened to be black, because I probably led them on because I was wondering if they were going to be my soulmate. And I do still talk to some of them to this day, and I feel really bad. But silly 19-year-old. And so another one of my really funky experiences with tarot was when I was 21. I decided to go to this like really non-traditional therapist, and she spent a lot of time like trying to acclimate me to her cat, because I've always been a dog person and not a cat person. And she used to read like my oracle cards. And it was really interesting. Like, it was $225 a session, and this woman was reading oracle cards and making me pet her cat. So that was quite an experience. And she would send me, it was like she had this referral system to make commission. And so she would like refer me to different other spiritual hokey people throughout New York City. And I would get like, I would go for a psychic reading, and she'd be like, oh, well, this one, Joanne, she can be a little negative. You should see this lady, Cece, because she's a little more uplifting. And so she'd pass me around, and I was buying it, because like when you have anxiety and you're not dealing with it, you will kind of latch on to anything you think is going to like feed it or help soothe it. And so I got this reading from this psychic, and I was living in an apartment at the time with a friend of a friend, and then this like random woman, and she was witchy and like middle-aged and really freaked me out. And so some of my stuff, quote unquote, went missing. I was just really sloppy, as you can kind of see, and I was misplacing it myself and forgetting about it. And so this psychic told me that this woman, Paula, was stealing from me, and that she's also worshiping the devil, likely. I was like, what? So I actually, this is so embarrassing, I decided to move out of that apartment. after this psychic reading because I just felt so unsafe. I felt so weird that this woman, Paula, was possibly a devil worshiper. Now, I don't know what kind of like fakakta commission ring this woman who was a therapist had going. Maybe she would, I'm thinking she would send people to these like BS tarot psychic readers so that they would scare her clients, and then she would continue to have clients coming back because it would, generate more and more drama. Um, which is, it's not a bad idea. It's not a bad gig. And another just like kind of funny tarot experience I have is a couple of my close friends have gotten into tarot reading, and they know me, so they'll kind of like manipulate me through the cards, and they'll give me advice that they know they can't just like say straight out, but they'll say it through the card reading, and they're like, wow, this Five of Pentacles really makes it feel like you should tough it out at your 9 to 5, like, and just kind of get the message across that way. But overall, over the years, I've sort of developed a healthier relationship to the mystical, and not, taken it too literally. I don't have a therapist that reads tarot cards anymore. She just focuses on mindfulness. So that's good because I don't think she's trying to exacerbate my stress. And that's, I have an oracle card here, and I think I'm going to finish by reading this because I feel like we're all going through a lot of change right now and a lot of craziness. I know it's hokey, but this is called the Kuan Yin Oracle deck. And it's called the Book of Changes, and it says, just like a beautiful but unusual melody, the divine plan is unfolding through your life, although it isn't always predictable. Kuan Yin is guiding you in the right direction. Even if you do not fully understand what's happening in your life right now, allow Kuan Yin to bless you with trust in the unfolding of your own divine path. Like, none of us know what's going on, but sometimes having a message like this, it's really comforting. And there's, definitely some connection and truth to it. And that is those are my anecdotes. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I love that. I mean, I don't love that all that happened to you necessarily, but I really liked how you closed that out with your oracle. I just wanted to share on my computer desk, I have a little jade Kuan Yin that I keep as sort of a worry stone. So that resonated with me for sure. And I have I think. Unfortunately, I think when I was like 14, I was dating this young woman who had a psychic at her birthday party, or she went to a birthday party and there was a psychic, and she got told that we were going to get married eventually. And so I feel like there's definitely like tarots. I think there's a lot of people out there that they assume all young women just want to hear about their soulmate or their partner, and then like I think a lot of people are getting pushed in that direction. And there were a couple cards I thought about pairing with Ronnie's anecdotes, and one that sort of immediately came to mind was the Magician, because in the earlier, more historic decks, the Magician is a street performer, and he's like doing prestidigitation, and he's making things disappear, and he's maybe also a pickpocket, and there's sort of an element of manipulation. And then the other card I thought might do well is because it's sort of a young person trying to make sense of the world and figure out their emotions and where they're standing, was the Page of Cups. But ultimately, I decided not to go with either of those two, because what the common theme throughout the story was sort of looking for higher guidance and a trustworthy source of guidance, and initially not being able to find it. And so the card is either called the Hierophant or the Pope, and it represents both spiritual authority, but also like an initiator or guide or doorway into deeper wisdom. And I think that's ultimately what so many of us are looking for is like a trustworthy guide or an experienced guide to help us sort some things out that maybe are in the moment beyond our own abilities. And so often we get waylaid. Like I don't want to condemn a woman I've never met, but I do not like the sound of your therapist that kept shopping you out to different to different people. So I think it sounds like you're in a good place now, and I feel like the Hierophant or the Pope really captures that journey in the cards. So thank you so much for sharing with that. I love. I love that you still shared a story actually about tarot. Like we've been doing the show for a few weeks now, and this is our first show that actually had a story about the cards themselves. And what a perfect fit! I loved hearing that. Thank you so much. And coming up next is a storyteller who I'm pleased to call a friend of mine, and he's not only a great performer, but he's a great person to get feedback on stories from, or to talk shop around stories and what makes them work and why. He's got a lot of interesting insights to share, and I can't wait to hear what he has for us tonight. I love all his stories, and I'm looking forward to hearing from him, and I'm thrilled to have him on this show. Please welcome Chris Corbell.
Hey everybody, I'm Chris Corbell, and I remember the first time I moved out to Los Angeles from New York City. I had my master's of playwriting. I was going to be a very successful screenwriter. And my first big Hollywood job was working at Macy's Women's Shoes. People always used to joke about that. Oh, you're like Al Bundy. And I would go, no, more like Ted Bundy. But when you worked in shoes, you would call yourself a shoe dog, because all the guys did who sold ladies' shoes at that Macy's was just fetch, fetch, fetch. Fetch a different shoe in a different color and one in a different fit all day long. Fetch me my shoe. Fetch me my shoe, shoe dog. And it was very depressing because I was on one hand literally at the feet of these women who were living my dream, whether they were directors or writers or producers. And yet at the same time, I felt so painfully far away from what I intended to do that brought me into this town. And then one day, I remember very clearly, I step onto the floor, it's just me, and I see the back of this woman in a beautiful linen pantsuit, just a very elegant woman. And the man next to her, I can see his face. He's wearing a blazer and an ascot and a silver mane of hair. They are the most elegant people I have ever seen in a Macy's, in this Macy's, any Macy's in my life. And I think I ended up saying that out loud. And the woman turns to me, and I see her holding her shoes, and it's Angela Lansbury, which she also may have heard me say out loud. And I said, wow, I just forget, you are the most elegant looking person here. And she just laughs, and she says, I'm coming back from a funeral, so I guess you could say I'm dressed to kill. Oh, I can't believe I said that. That was terrible. And I said, I've heard you say worse. Because a long time ago, when I was a small boy of 13, back in 1979, I had seen Miss Angela Lansbury on Broadway in the musical production of Sweeney Todd. Now, if you don't know the story of Sweeney Todd is a musical by Stephen Sondheim, directed by Hal Prince. It is about the demon barber of Fleet Street, which is a man who cuts off the heads of these people. And then the woman who he's renting the space from, a woman named Mrs. Lovett, she makes the worst pies in London, and she takes the bodies of these men that he kills and makes the worst pies in London. She's in love with Sweeney. It's a sad operetta. Things don't end wonderfully at all. But oh my God, 13-year-old me, it blew my mind. It showed me the magic of theater. And I am telling Angela Lansbury all this. And she is completely enamored. This is amazing, a fan of something she is so proud of. Now, a few people are coming up to her and go, hey, you're from Murder, She Wrote. I'm going to give you a secret about Angela Lansbury. She does not give a damn about Murder, She Wrote. She doesn't give a damn that she was the voice in Beauty and the Beast. If you go up to her, she'll be very polite. You say that, and boom, on to the next thing. But if you want to talk to her about Sweeney Todd, you own her. And we talked about every element, the stage design, working with Sondheim, working with a revolving set, the music, the characters. And her husband is just kind of sitting there very politely, just letting her have her fun. Now, another secret about Angela is she's a 10. And when I say she's a 10, I'm not saying on a scale of 1 to 10 in beauty, she's a knockout. Though I will say, for a woman of a certain age, below the neck, she is built like a showgirl still. She's quite an attractive woman. She's like the world's hottest grandma. But I mean that she's a size 10 shoe. And in the world of women's shoes, especially at that Macy's, we really don't have a lot of shoes in her size. And she loves shoes, and she keeps on picking out these different shoes. And because she's Angela Lansbury, of course I want to find them. And because she's a size 10, I don't have them. But it's just going back and forth. And for some weird reason, I just feel now like I'm in a little play comedy where it stars Angela Lansbury as the woman who's trying to find a shoe, and me as the befuddled shoe salesman trying to find her that shoe, and the husband who eventually just gets very tired of this whole farce. And he says, it's time for us to go, dear. And she gets up, and it's this weird moment where you realize she's leaving, and we had this beautiful experience, and I know I'm never going to see her again. And I think she must have sensed something, because she looks at me and she takes out a card and she starts writing things down on the back of the card. And she places it firmly in my hand. She says, Chris, if you ever see a shoe that you think would be right for me, I want you to put it aside and call me. I wrote down my phone number, my home number, my business number. Just check it out. And if you ever need something, just call me and I'll come and try on the shoe. And then she and her elegant husband walk away to some other elegant affair, wherever elegant people from old Hollywood go. And I'm holding this card in my hand, and I see it literally says Angela Lansbury, like an autograph. And then I see her phone number written very well, her business number. And then I see her home number. And as I look at this card and I hold this card, I'm imagining finding her shoes, and then maybe we'll go to lunch and she'll ask me, what am I really about? And then I'm a writer, and she'll introduce me to her friend Stephen Sondheim, and all these wonderful things. And years later, when I'm accepting my Tony or my Oscar or my Emmy, we'll laugh about how this all happened in this little event with the shoes. And then the shoe store, and there's her name, and there's her phone number, and of course there's her shoe size, and there's the heel length that she prefers, and there's the fabrics that she prefers, and the colors that she doesn't like, and the straps that she does. It's a remarkably detailed card of a lot of particular things that she does and does not want in her shoe from her shoe salesman. The person whose job is to find her the shoe that she needs, wants, and specifically likes. And I tear up the card, because I am not going to be Angela Lansbury's shoe dog. And I quit Macy's a year later. And I've never seen Angela Lansbury again. And sometimes I get very bitter, but I think to myself, what if this was just a story about a woman who's very sad because she just came from a friend's funeral, and she meets a young man who reminds her of her golden Tony Award-winning performance, and she gets to play with a lot of shoes. She doesn't have to buy them, and she leaves feeling a little bit better than when she got there. I think that would make a wonderful movie. I could even see who they could get to play her. I think it would just be the most perfect part for someone like Judi Dench. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Chris. I absolutely adore that story. I had pretty much only a single card came to mind when you were sharing that, and that was the Hanged Man, and it's there's different traditions about who this person is. Sometimes he's referred to as the traitor. Other times he's referred to as an acrobat, but it's a man suspended in an uncomfortable position, being hung from his foot upside down. And I don't know if you can see on the camera, but he's actually in a moment of repose, and he's finding peace and a moment of comfort despite the circumstances, and not being not having his well-being dictated by his external circumstances. He's finding comfort within the moment and within himself. It reminds me a little bit about like the Buddhist story about a man being chased by a tiger, and he's stuck on the edge of a cliff, and he takes the time to reach out and taste a cherry, and it's like the sweetest cherry he's ever had. And I think the other thing about this position is the uncomfortableness of the hangman is it's not ongoing. It's a temporary situation. So I think, here's Chris coming to Los Angeles with lots of ambition and finds himself in a shoe store, but gets to have this moment with Angela Lansbury, and it's special. And not only does he get to enjoy that moment, but then he has his own personal awakening in regards to it, that, he doesn't want to be Angela Lansbury's shoe dog, and I think that's a good choice. I'm really happy he made that. God, I like that story so much. There's a lot there. Thank you so much for sharing that, Chris. And I'm very happy to introduce our next storyteller. And one of the things that one of the things I've enjoyed the most about this show, putting on this show, is expanding my network of people I know in the storytelling world. And our next storyteller is a woman who I met through doing this show. We just connected recently, and I'm thrilled to have her on it and get to know her. And I can't wait till we can meet up at a show in person and say hi, and not just have to settle for the virtual world. But for the time being, it is what it is. And I couldn't be happier to have her with us tonight. Please welcome Mary Margaret Martinez.
Hi, I'm Mary Margaret, and I know we're all stuck at home lately. We're all quarantined, and I've been seeing a lot of drama on Facebook and Instagram about women who have to cut their own hair or do their own nails, or there are women who are suffering because they can't go to a beauty parlor. And I gotta tell you, quarantine has not changed my life at all, because I gave up hygiene years ago. Seriously, I've had it with hygiene. I'm done. I'm not going to do it anymore. All the shaving, waxing, clipping, cutting, I'm done. Do you know how long it took me just to get ready for this show tonight? Actually, it's a very bad example, because not very long at all. I'm not even wearing pants. But if you consider that, like, on an average, the average American woman spends about an hour and a half a day just working on her personal appearance. Do the math. I've spent like 47 years of my life just on hygiene. And who am I doing it for? I know we don't really know each other very well, and I don't really like to talk about it much, but I am recently divorced. And there's no husband to be fresh and pretty for. And trust me, when there was, he stank way worse than I ever did. So why? Why am I even doing it? What, so people won't think I'm European? Please, I'm way too fat to be mistaken for a European. And so what? What if someone did think I was European? What would they do? Offer me a cigarette? I can live with that, especially if it means I don't have to shave my armpits, because guess what? Shaving your armpits sucks. I wasn't always like this. I used to try. Back in the olden days when we used to go places and do things, I was once invited to a spa day with my girlfriends. And as I mentioned, I was married for a very long time, which means obviously no one ever saw me naked. So when I knew I was going to spend an entire naked afternoon with a bunch of women, I made an effort. You know, I shaved my legs and my horrible armpits. I got a mani-pedi. I got myself all kind of gussied up. And I walked into a room full of naked women for what was probably the first time since my high school locker room. And I was humiliated because my pubic hair is totally out of style. I mean, there I was sporting the basic triangle, you know, the line across the top, thighs converging. Simple yet elegant, I thought. But every other woman there had the runway thing going on, you know, the skinny little strip right down the middle. Except for my friend Bryn, who has an entirely different situation going on. Bryn is kind of, what is the word? Smooth. I felt like a cave woman. I mean, who comes up with these trends? I guess if you're the kind of woman who goes to a waxologist every couple of weeks, I guess maybe you keep up on the latest waxing fashions. But as I mentioned, I was married for 26 years. Waxing is expensive. My husband and I always chose to spend that money on cable. But okay, I'm single again now. I got to step up my game. So I called Bryn. I asked her, Bryn, do men like the prepubescent look? And Bryn said, this is not something you do for men. This is something you do to take care of yourself. You do this for self-respect. So in the interest of self-respect, I decided to do some research into waxing salons. I found a place called the Velvet Monkey and another place called Brave Kitty, but it turns out I'm not all that brave. But I finally did end up making an appointment at a place called Sassy Ladies Beauty Bar. I was devastated when I learned that there's no actual bar involved because I really could have used a stiff drink. But no, I went and rang the bell and was welcomed into this room that was painted entirely black and all of the furnishings were hot pink. And the receptionist introduced me to Teresa, who would be my personal waxologist. And Teresa took me into a little back room behind sliding doors, and there was an elevated table in the middle of the room. And it had a roll of that thin tissue paper like at your doctor's office on the exam table. So it felt kind of clean and clinical and not terribly scary. So, okay, Teresa left me alone to disrobe. As she said, just take off everything from the waist down. So I did. And I got on the table and I looked for that little paper cover like you have at your doctor's office, but there was no paper cover there. So I kind of just perched on the end of the table and was trying to, find a position that looked casual. And when Teresa came back in, she just said, oh, just lay back and relax. Put your hands behind your head and then take the soles of your feet and put them together. So, okay. Then she reaches and takes this like 500-watt lamp and aims the beam right into my bikini area. So there I am, splayed on this table with my caveman pubes under an interrogation light. And Teresa just starts chatting away. She says, so Mary Margaret, what kind of work do you do? Where are you from originally? Are you married? And I was thinking, shouldn't we be pretending that we can't see each other? This whole transaction was going down totally differently than the way I expected it to. I kind of thought it would be like going to confession, like when I was a little kid in Catholic school. I thought I would be behind a screen or something. But Teresa just kept jabbering away and ladling on the hot wax, which was also hot pink, by the way. And I know that you're expecting me to talk about how painful it was, but honestly, I don't even remember the pain because I was so psychologically traumatized that I think I went into a kind of a dissociative state because I could hear myself talking back to Tressa like we were old pals, and this wasn't weird at all. And I said things like, I don't usually like to talk about it, but I'm recently divorced. And then Tressa said, you know what, honey, you just get right back on that horse that threw you. And then I said, I think in this particular circumstance, horse seems like a generous word. So then Tressa said, do you do yoga? And I said, why are you asking me that question? And she said, are you familiar with the happy baby pose? And unfortunately, I am. So when she said, just reach down and grab the outer edges of your feet and then pull your knees up toward your chest. And then she said, and I'll just clean up your rear. A small eternity later, it was finally over. And Tressa said, I'll leave you alone to get dressed. I'll give you a little privacy. And I thought, now? You're giving me privacy now? Hasn't the privacy ship sailed? But I did. I got up and got dressed. I pulled on my underpants and I felt very prepubescent. And I went out to the reception area. I took my credit card out and the receptionist said that will be 1 month of DirecTV Premium. And well, that's not actually what she said, but that's kind of exactly what I heard, because guess what? Prepubescence does not come cheap. So I went home. I called my friend Bryn. I explained to her that I had had a lot more self-respect before the happy baby pose. And I gotta tell you, I quit. I mean it. The next time you see me, you might think I'm a German tourist, because I'm gonna have hairy armpits and out of style pubes, because I don't care anymore. I'm not doing it. No more hygiene. It's expensive. It's oppressive. It's sexist. It's classist, and it's totally extraneous. I might still wear lipstick though. I think lipstick is kind of cute.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for sharing that. That was a lot of fun. Well, I don't know. Fun's not exactly the right word, but I like the spirit which with you conveyed all that in, and like I get so overwhelmed by the world's expectations of what I'm supposed to look like, or what the proper way to be in this world is, and conforming to external expectations. And I feel like, and I'm a man, like I haven't even gotten it full brunt. Like, I don't even know what it's like. I've seen a light version of it, and I don't like it. And so going through that story, there were a couple cards that sort of came to mind, but the one I settled on, and I think the one that's the most appropriate for that story is the Queen of Coins, or the Queen of Pentacles. And the Suit of Pentacles, they have to do with sometimes money, but more the material world and external factors and expectations. And there's in the pages and the Knights of the Pentacles, the lower ranked suits, there's sort of a struggle to control the element and to be in charge of it. And by the time you get to the Queen, like the Queen is decisively in control. Like she's not open to other people's opinions anymore. Like she's a master of her own domain. Like she is setting her own course. And I feel like deciding after the happy baby pose that you were done with it, that you were opting out, that you were done with that is a Queen of Pentacles move, and one I fully support. I think that's absolutely the right decision. And I have to say, there were a lot of elements in that story that got to me, but the idea that you weren't that the awkwardness caused you to disassociate so much that you weren't even aware of whether or not it was painful, I think says everything. The awkwardness and the sort of the tension of the situation overrided the physical pain. Oh man, like that I think we can all sort of empathize with that sort of out of body feeling. that things like that bring up. Like, oh man, I'm really happy you shared that with us. That was a great story. So thrilled to have you a part of the show tonight. And now is the part of the show where I'm gonna take the 3 cards that we've generated from each of our stories and perform a quick little reading with them. And just as a quick review, from Ronnie's story, we have what's known as the Pope or the Hierophant. From Chris's story, we have the Hangman. And from Mary Margaret's story, we have the Queen of Pentacles. And I like, there's one of the things that's nice about doing a 3-card reading is you can really see three cards are really good because it breaks things down into beginnings, middles, and ends. And with these 3 cards, we have, starting with the Pope or the Hierophant, we have the search for higher wisdom, and certainly in Ronnie's story, not necessarily going smoothly and sort of being misdirected a little bit. And I think with everything going on in the world, with the quarantine, I think a lot of us have been searching for sources of wisdom and solace and maybe higher things to sort of comfort us. But that despite of it, like Chris's story, we're stuck in an uncomfortable situation where we're challenged to sort of find repose in a difficult moment. And I think that's very appropriate to the moment we find ourselves in now. I think like the Hangman, sort of the world's been inverted and we're sort of suspended upside down in this alternate universe. But we can find our certain level of own peace within it, and also take solace in the fact that it's a temporary situation that'll move forward. And I'm really happy with what we're concluding with, which is the Queen of Pentacles. And it's like after searching for the higher wisdom with the Pope or the Hierophant card, and then being suspended upside down with the Hangman. We move to a note of mastery that we'll have the opportunity to take control and have influence over who we are and how we are in the world, and that also going forward, that we don't have to accept the world on its own terms and as it's been presented to us, that we can influence it to better suit our needs and how we're going to be in it, and we can define our own space and sort of claim our own element and our own way of being in the world. And so I think what we have is not an easy progression from card to card, but one that's very worthwhile, and one that will ultimately end with, despite the helplessness of the moment, will ultimately end with us much more in control. Very much like Mary Margaret in her story, like she's taking control, and that's what we're all being called to do. And so I think what a fun bunch of stories we've had, and I'm particularly happy with the reading that came from all of that. And that is our show this week. Thank you all so much for tuning in and for being a part of it. We'll be back next week with a new group of storytellers and new cards to read, and sort of to gain insight in what's going on with the crazy mixed up world we find ourselves in. And thank you so much for being a part of it. Bye.